So, hey, Chris.
Are we rolling?
We are rolling. This is Chris McQuilkin, otherwise known as Tex. He's known as Tex to me. Um, but he is a coach for Power Athlete and has spent most of his life and career in strength and conditioning. It sounds like I'm reading off of something right now. It's pretty
But you're not.
impressive, but I'm not. Not only is Tex a strength and conditioning guru, one of his passions, I would say, is coaching and connecting with athletes. So, kind of like that communication aspect, which I think delves very deep into leadership and the leadership mindset. So it's exciting to be talking to you about this stuff because usually we're just shooting the shit over some beers, and now we're gonna get deep.
Well, we usually get deep and it's informal. And my aim for this talk and conversation is just to have it be like any other conversation that we've had.
That's true.
Oh
Yeah.
And
boy, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
but it's real. And this is what we speak about when we do get together. There's a few adult sodas involved at the same time, but it is real. Is authentic.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into all that. I know that we also want to touch on, since strength and conditioning is your bread and butter for Power Athlete, and you've worked at numerous universities in that capacity. You've also worked with military and LEO, and that's a part of the programming that's put out there by Power Athlete. And we will definitely try to set aside some time to talk about meeting the demands of law enforcement through training and replicating those demands, because I know obviously that's near and dear to Lexi and I's heart. So I guess firstly, we've talked about this a ton, but I want you to tell everyone why it is that to me, you're the coach's coach. You embody what it is to coach and to be driven by that passion to educate, and, as you say, take an athlete where they cannot take themselves. So, like, what about that is so appealing to you?
I couldn't tell you where the draw came from, but it is a vitality, it is a life force. And I've mentioned this to you. I know my grandmother, Nana McQuilkin, one of my favorite quotes is reach for the stars and you'll land on the roof, but reach for the roof and you'll remain on the sidewalk. And like for years, I've just had this in my mind and it almost like a backhanded family compliment. Like, you're gonna aim for the stars, but you're not anything. You're just gonna end up on the roof. But the key thing is, as I come to grow into adult and then I'm leading young men and women now, it is the aim. That is what is important. So the coach, in my mind, you help youth, you help individuals, you help teams aim. And then you can put them in a position to believe that they are something. So wherever that came from within me, it is finding that aim or somebody having a belief about themselves and then you setting them straight, right? There's a self-esteem for an individual that can be too high, and that's going to run into some problems for them, meaning they are not a coachable person. When a somebody who is well-meaning and they have too high self-esteem, somebody that is well-meaning gives them feedback, constructive criticism, a candor, an honest perspective, and they're like, no, F that person. No, they don't know what they're talking about. And then that trips them up later on in life because they didn't listen when somebody was aiming to correct it. And then you have the individuals too low self-esteem when you're trying to pull them up and lift them up and put them in a perspective to a position to understand, like, hey, what you're seeing and feeling and experiences, that's not the lens that I see it. Here, let's get you back to a position where we can turn you into something better than you are right now. Now, what I found in a coaching perspective, both through sport and strength, is that weight training, that is the ultimate equalizer where you put in time, effort, and then results come out on the other end. With sport, there's a lot of, coin toss, random chance how the ball bounces. So your effort you put into it may not equal outcome. And then in the real world, job, life, experience, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So there is a lot of that involved. And despite you may be the best person for the job, you may not get it just because this or that. So the ultimate, get what you put in is the training, it is the nutrition, it is that self ownership. So coaching in that respect, it's helping people through weights now aim to understand who they are at this moment in time so that they can become wherever the hell it is they want, or be a model for someone else, youth, if they have a kid, for example, or they're leading a group, and saying, hey, and then my favorite line, coach needs a coach. Aim to be that for them so that they can take these people where they can't take themselves.
Yeah, I think you're right on with the weightlifting thing. Like, there's so many variables in sport, or that could affect all the training that you've done. But really, weightlifting, like, there's nothing that's kind of more indicative of a long-term just grind, because your body doesn't really necessarily start changing right away. Like, you really have to just keep going and keep at it and keep trying. And we all know when you first start, you get way stronger and then you plateau, and it's just like kind of slow incremental growth as you get more experience. And to see someone who can actually stick with that over a long period of time, I think shows um, a great deal of perseverance, and that can translate to other aspects of life.
Absolutely. And the target group audience that I'm working with now, 13, 14-year-olds in middle school, with the specific sport of lacrosse. I'm trying to use sport to now get them into weightlifting, but I like this age because it's important. And you notice something in the transition from a kid from seventh to eighth grade, and that having fun is in seventh grade is mostly playing grab ass, being out there with your boys, having some fun. Yes, we get to play some games, but who cares about the outcome? And then they transition into eighth grade, and then having fun is being good. A very skill based game in lacrosse, and they finally start to see that coordination. And we can get in the whole skill development phases of a novice if we like, but at the same time, they experience that, and then they start to now see, oh, I'm actually good at this. I'm going to spend more time practicing. But it's the same age group: music, language, art. I just like sport because I'm outside. I get to talk a little shit, teach them how to talk shit. And really, I mean, it's fun. We're outside, and then you're seeing this transition. Hopefully, it translates soon to the barbell and create a little barbell club in my small hometown. But at the same time, I'm using this now because I have other sport coaches with me. I have to communicate to parents as almost a leadership, communication, social experiment of how these 9 to 5 dudes that are volunteering for the most part their time, certainly time not equal to the payment we're receiving, but how these amateur coaches are communicating. And the Wellborn Power Athlete CEO founder will always drop something along the lines of something quotable of always be a white belt. And then we've been in the coaching game so long, you forget what it's like to be new. So now I'm exposing my experience back to somebody that's new, that's overexcited, that only remembers their college experience as a coach, and trying to grind these kids because that's what worked for them. No, stop. You were 22 years old and probably an asshole. Stop treating these 13-year-olds like that. So it's that's again still using principles of strength and conditioning, but now skill acquisition, and then seeing how leadership can be developed the same way that I know strength training, speed, power, and all these adaptations are. So that's where I'm at, still a student in all of this, and of both the sport of lacrosse and now communication and leadership.
It's interesting that you talk about becoming a white belt again, and and also seeing things through the amateur coach's eye. I think we can draw some big parallels with that in terms of coming into police work, being a novice, and then you have, people that have been around a while, but at the same time, our understanding of police work has evolved, just as in strength and conditioning and coaching, we've become even, there's more and more research and more focus behind communication and that kind of thing that helps drive even better coaching. So you have to constantly be a student and allow yourself to evolve in both of our respective professions, in order to have to optimize the performance of whoever it is you're serving, which in your case is the athlete, and for us could either be the other officers or the community. And I was one of the questions I wanted to ask you before we get into the nitty gritty, and I'm not sure how I want to couch this question because it's a few layers, but are coaches leaders? Are leaders coaches? Where's the overlap? And does it diverge at some point? I don't have an answer. I feel like yes to all those, but maybe you have some thoughts on it.
This is where we can diverge into like the positional leadership, where I am at this position, you must listen to me. But then if you're relying on the name coach for athletes to listen to you and buy in, it's going to be a long freaking season, and you will edit yourself out. That's a new term I learned from Dr. Kara Miller, a leadership coach. Edit yourself out. And it's unfortunate because you may blame the kids and then leave a negative imprint on them. But if you're, I wouldn't say using the term coach to lead, you just lead. One of my favorite sayings, and going back to our experience teaching and leading seminars together, uh, leaders lead, everybody else fall in line. And even if I'm labeled as a B team assistant coach, if there is no one stepping up to lead said drill, I'm just going to take the ball and run for it. Or if I'm waiting 30 minutes for a response to this email to come in, I'm going to take the ball and run with it. So are leaders coaches? No, leaders are leaders. They just happen to be in coaching positions, but then there's also people in coaching positions that aren't leaders and right for it. I would also delineate where people would say teachers or coaches are teachers. No, those are two different skills, teaching and coaching. Teaching, in my mind, is having a comprehensive overview. If we were to use the squat as an example, I know how to communicate the setup, the execution, my expectation of execution. I know almost every fault that could possibly go wrong. And then I'm going to teach another coach that. It's one of the things we do at Power Athlete. But now coaching the squat, I'm going to set Callie up in the squat. I'm going to set her free to move. And I'm going to communicate one thing she needs to fix through my whole comprehension or knowledge base on said movement. But coaching is just fixing and correcting one thing at a time. Awesome, we got that. Let's hit another set. Okay, she fixed that, but now Callie, think about this. Push the ground away. So it's I would split those two, and I have put thought into that, but now I'll put more thought into leader and coach and splitting those apart. I would say different skill sets. And if for the skill of coaching versus the position of coach.
Well, I wonder how much of the word mentor comes into that. Like good leaders are great mentors, good coaches are great mentors, sort of a willingness to share your knowledge. And also, like you said, in a digestible manner. I think that's something I saw a lot when I was managing trainers, that you could always tell the like right off the degree or, certification trainer, because they wanted to tell you everything about what you were doing wrong in one set. But you're right, a good coach takes all that knowledge and recognizes what's the most important thing to talk about in this moment, and then build on that. And I think that can be shown in so many different things. Like you could do something wrong, if we're bringing it back to police work, and have a sergeant just give you every single thing you did wrong, and you kind of leave that interaction saying, well, fuck, I can't do anything right then, can I? Rather than, hey, this was the most important thing I need to see improvement on. And we can talk about the rest later or whatever it may be. I think you're very correct in saying that is a leadership quality amongst the coaching as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And from a leadership perspective, and I'm thinking of an athlete lens at this respect, it's what are we willing to grow? Because there are lots of negative things that I could say to this, but then what do I want to grow? What positive imprint do I want to leave at this moment? And then what am I willing to tolerate? This is more on the behavior side, or not listening to me for doing these lazy pickups or lazy approaches to those things, where if I communicated, hey, I'm looking for this, and then they didn't do that because they were thinking about something else, uh, plenty of faults within the skill or the movement, and I don't say anything, then I'm tolerating it. So how can I provide some positive reinforcement for movement, behavior, action, leadership? And then what am I willing to tolerate? So there's that balance between that rule of one, in which I mentioned before, and then not acknowledging poor behavior or poor movement pattern. And it is this fine line, and it takes reps. And I have you can ask any of my teammates and coaches, even Callie, that there's a notebook. I have a coach's notebook. There's one right here. I have a ton of these. I would love to just, intern's job is to take these and just write all the scribble I have in there. But it's 1, 2, 3 things that I take away from every practice, even it's with the 13-year-olds or coaching coaches at one of our seminars. Okay, 1, 2, 3 things, and then those turn into the one-liners, the cliches that I love to throw out there. Teach movement, not movements. Coach needs a coach. So maybe I got my quoting from Nana, but it's become an impactful, compact way for me to communicate to coaches to then help them communicate to whoever the hell they're working with.
Do you find when you're working, especially with kids, I remember when I used to work with kids, especially younger ones, like my focus always at first was trying to kind of get them excited to learn and kind of excited to be disciplined and sort of going after their outlook on the actual activity rather than like a skill acquisition. Would you say that you have any techniques around that, like just trying to get buy-in before you really start to hammer in on some of the small or the tweaks you want to see with the actual skill acquisition? Or
Oh yeah, this is from Harrison Bernstein, and one of the most valuable pieces about having a podcast, Power Athlete Radio, shameless plug. I don't know how much you would mention it, Callie, but Callie assists.
Probably not enough.
Probably not enough. The value of podcasts and opportunities like this is to meet experts and still learn from them. And Harrison Bernstein, he's the CEO of Soldiers to Sidelines, an ex-NFL strength and conditioning coach. But what really jumped out to me from hearing him speak and present, and then bringing him on the podcast to break this down, is imagine a hierarchy of what a coach would value and then instill in their team. So if we have a pyramid as represented, the base of that from a coach's perspective, and I'll tell you right now what I'm going to say is wrong, but the base of a coach's perspective that we love to talk about is always that strategy. Then the pillar or the plank above strategy would be technique, breaking down the specifics. Imagine football, lacrosse, or even shooting, marksmanship. Then from there you get into the fitness, their physical ability to exercise, to be explosive, to replicate said skill that they just learned, the technique, and then motivation, and finally inspiration. So sport coaches often get this wrong. They value this strategy and technique and put it all on them. We are winning because of my strategy, how I communicate this technique for this position. No. When you start to work with athletes and focus on empowering them and truly taking them where they can't take themselves, you have to start with inspiration and then work your way to that motivation, breaking those two things apart. So motivation is where I would take my athlete and find their why. Dive into all these different things where inspiration is this spark, this moment, this time where I can use my voice, the actions, the movement of my body to get some enthusiasm, to get the kids to laugh, and then get into the motivation of this person as an individual. Then that will feed into the motivation of the team. So inspiration, that's the most difficult part of the coach. But then when we talk about the long game, it is that motivation. So it's a limited resource. So the sooner you can get an athlete to believe in themselves, I can go back to that self-esteem position, too high, too low. We need it just right so they can take coaching feedback. And then if they ever get too high, hey, we can bring them back to progress. We don't want to get too excited because then we're going to start to make mistakes. We don't want to get too low because we're going to enter into a quicksand. And then the harder you fight, the more you're going to sink down in this performance deficit versus freeze. And I can use my teammates to help me pull out of quicksand. I use that analogy, that picture a lot with a team, especially when we start to allow 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 goals in a row, and then they start trying too hard and getting penalties, and it's just this endless, and before you know it, we've lost the game in the second quarter. So it's that perspective taken away from Harrison, and he does an amazing job explaining this in his book Everyday Coach, that I would highly recommend to anyone out there. And that is a good tool for you to look for different communication in your life, daily life, to then see how I could improve my communication or coaching. His perspective, everything is coaching. Everyone's a coach. And it was cool, just this hierarchy and I fell into it as both a sport coach and a strength coach, right? Obsessing over the X's and the O's, the sets and the reps, the setup and the execution, and then neglecting, for the most part, the individual, the athlete, or only valuing the group, the individuals that were good, or loving the fitness and the training, and then not giving my best to the people that needed me the most.
The what you described when you were kind of going through the hierarchy where the base is really like inspiration and um that connection that you build before you can start to, I guess, add the stress of skill acquisition and that kind of thing. That it's so funny because it takes my mind back to like the way we used to lead seminars. And a lot of that was just by trial and error. But I think we found the best way to get people to open up to be vulnerable enough to try to follow our methodology. Because a lot of, I mean, it was adults and they showed up with a bunch of egos, and you have 40 coaches from wherever. That I think a lot of that comes from authenticity and sort of just not putting on airs when you're in front of a group or you're in a position to lead or to coach kids or adults or whatever, and being yourself and being having maybe a little playfulness to how you approach things to kind of break down those barriers, and then you start to temper in the tone of seriousness and focus and intensity and that kind of thing. I think that was like a good nuanced balance that we tried to create, and that was over time we eventually polished that, but it was always a work in progress. And I'm wondering how, through what you described in your own personal evolution of that pyramid, and focusing a bit more on connecting with different folks, how have you seen that affect the athletes in not only their performance, but as you referenced earlier, like coaching is not just about field performance, it's about equipping them with the skills to deal with setbacks in life or whatever. Have you seen that translate to them, not only in performance but other kind of maturity or whatever?
Absolutely. I love the warm up, and we can get into it,
I
but
hate the warm up.
I know
This.
it's the most undervalued piece of every single training session, practice, performance. if we think about when it comes to training and sport, the only consistent thing you have is the warm up. Then you have a different game scheme, then you have a different practice plan, so on and so forth. But we have this moment with the warm up, and listening to these kids or seeing the helmet, it's clear as day with a helmet. Like if I can't even see your face when I'm speaking to you, okay, we got a problem. Like how are we going to get these kids to get a base level of confidence where we can now improve said skill? So use the warm up and then a military count. So imagine a push up where I start at the top and it's going to be a down is one count, two is back push up, three is back down, and then I finish and we would say one. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2. And a leader would count the 1, 2, 3, and the team would say the rep number. So finding movements like a holding a side pillar. So 5 second, 5 4 count side pillars, ready, go. Push-ups, squats, and then assigning the kid. Once they taught the movement, I set up and set them free. And I can coach individuals while they're counting the reps rather than I coach count the reps. You don't pay me to count. No, you pay me to fix, correct, and empower. So it's finding different kids to say, all right, Nick, 5 4 count push-ups, ready, ready. And then they initiate the one. I don't say go. And then eventually, if we talk about a season's 3 4 months long, I got 40 kids. I'm picking individuals throughout this. There's purposely 5 exercises that involve a count in our warm up that mix and evolve. Again, we don't want to do the same routine in the warm up because then you accommodate and you stop developing your athleticism. You got to stress to progress. Write that down. That's another one-liner, guys. And so I got 40 kids. Aim to spread it out. Next year, I'll probably keep a log to see and then track also who starts to step up into a game. So this year was just observational to when kids step up into a huddle or scream and motivate from the sideline. And where the coaches I was still paired with, they have this old school mindset of this is our best kid. He needs to be the captain, but he doesn't say anything. Okay, we need to force this responsibility. I want to say responsibility. We want to force him into this captain role because he's the best player. No, stop. Leaders lead, everybody else falls in line. There's something going on with this kid where he is not confident enough to speak at this moment in time. Let's work with him to then see what we can do. Starts with counting and then evolves to, hey man, I need you to go take the coin toss for us. Or
I thought you were going to say wash my car.
Oh, no. You can't wash a car on Wind Street, Callie. Everybody knows that. The
on Wind Street.
wind streaks. Yeah. So finding different.
What about on lost streaks?
Oh, yeah. Then together we need a fundraising car wash, but it's just my truck. But yeah, so it's finding these different opportunities, but not pressuring. You should. This should is my least favorite word at this moment in time. It changes, but they should be able to. And when talk about if we're developing a skill or it's somebody working within the company, they should be able to do that.
You know what's so funny when I hear that? You're probably about to say it, but it's like when I hear they should be able to, you might as well be saying, I haven't equipped them with how to do X, Y, Z. Like you might as well just take the finger, point it back at you, because all you're doing is trying to skirt the blame. It's crazy.
Anyway. Well, I think the correct question after that of they should be able to do that of, okay, well, when did you teach them how to do it?
Yes. What did you do to put them in a position to succeed?
And coaches get mad. They get frustrated. And they get mad at athletes for mistakes. And when the kid hasn't learned that yet, and I coach, somebody gets mad at them and they haven't taught them yet, or they're in the wrong position and the coach is losing their stuff because, well, you still didn't teach them, or they are making a mistake because they're fatigued or they were confused on how it was communicated in the huddle. And also the kid or the individual, the person They may be doing their best, but they are simply not capable of doing your expectation. And you're still getting mad at them. Edit them out, find them a different position to then put them in a position to succeed. Or, I mean, the coach just immediately jumps to taking a trip to negative town and then gets mad at the athletes for then following their body language. If the coach is putting their head down and slamming,
Defeated. Mm-hmm.
and then the kids do that, and then the coach gets mad at them. I see these things all the freaking time. It's mind-boggling the things the athlete does that then the coach gets mad at. But you're right. It is pointing. It is a reflection of their lack of leadership, and then it is systemic, and that program will never be successful. Or the worst thing, they are successful, and then these kids go on to the next level, or the coaches underneath the individual go on to then coach at other programs or move up in their respective jobs outside of coaching, and they didn't learn the valuable lessons that could be costly when they do lose. The I mean, learning to lose is a very valuable thing because you got to take a hard look at yourself, and people will come out after you with the knives out. And then, if you are truly doing your best, teaching them pieces that then they're giving their best effort, and we just get beat on the field, the court, the rink, and competition, okay, but we did our best. And it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game is real, especially at the age group in which I'm playing, where I mean, I could tell you my middle school coaches. I couldn't tell you their freaking records way back then. It just doesn't matter, but it does. Everything outside of wins and loss matters. Unfortunately, especially in the state of Texas, everything is determined. And I mean, college sports, holy crap, that's that's a whole mess all in itself. Wins and losses, and then coaches start to cut corners because they know, like, they're on the chopping block, and then those corners just they get cut, and so on and so forth. Before you know it, the school's getting violations, and then the coach is saying, "All right, I'm out of here," and the school and the kids still pay the price.
There's a lot in what you just said, but I'm reminded of, no, it's okay. I'm reminded of just that simple thing of giving different kids the leadership of having those counts and leading a group. And I just remember one of my most favorite things to do, whether it was with kids I was working with, coaching, or like people that I was managing, was finding that person that was sort of your most unlikely leader. Maybe they're like sort of your devil's advocate person that's always, contrarian, and giving them a leadership role, and just seeing how they blossom and how good of a leader they become, just by giving them just a little bit of responsibility. And so I love that, that you find that in the warm up with your kids.
And that is important also for like people that are negative towards the leader, the coach.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know there's frustration where it's like, okay, well, if you're so critical, why don't you just do it? That is a very emotional response. Say, hey man, I got to handle this right now. Can you take over the warm up? So the individuals that are talking or coming and interrupting my players during dead bugs and some of our stuff, and they're not focused on the count or their team, I go and warm up the goalie, or go talk to a parent and hand them the warm up card. Because if you're going to disrespect my kids, you're disrespecting me and how valuable this 10 minutes is. I'm going to put it all in your hands, and I'm going to watch you fuck it up. And then I'm going to come back, and we're going to have a little mentorship session on the value of this and what you're taking away for not valuing my athlete's time. So
I think I love that approach, though, of just not emotionally responding with just the immediate, you know what, if you think you can do a better job, here you go. But having the ruse of, hey, I gotta go handle this over here. I need you to do this, and more, under the guise of instilling confidence, like, hey, I have confidence that you can handle this. But really, you're presenting them with a challenge, hoping that they will rise to the occasion. And, sometimes I feel like when Lexi like talks about like a contrarian or somebody who just kind of likes to poke and is, everybody knows those kind of kids, but, and even those personalities translate into adulthood too. There are plenty of adults like that too, that are, either always complaining, it's always someone else's fault, whatever. It's almost like there's a lack of confidence in them. And so they're sort of projecting this type of thing. And so when you take that 5 minutes to present them with something that you, in to what it seems to them is you have confidence that they can successfully do the warm up or successfully lead a roll call or whatever it is. It does, it sort of plants a seed of confidence in their mind where maybe it wasn't before. That's just kind of my interpretation of it.
And I found that those contrarians, the people that sort of put on this face of like, oh, this is stupid, blah, blah, blah. You give them that little bit of responsibility, or you value what they say for a moment, and then you put them in charge of other people. Like, they actually become some of the best leaders because they are somehow able to do what they need to do to stand up to, like say what's wrong in a situation, or, fix something, but they're also get a lot of buy-in from, I don't know, but like they need to have that little extra confidence, and it just starts with giving them some responsibility, and then they see that their negative attitude could affect other people, whereas they could take that contrarian sort of bent that they have and put it towards good.
Yeah, then there's plenty of people that are going to come after leaders and then be that armchair quarterback. So if you have the opportunity to provide that mentorship session, take it. The worst thing you can do is not say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean barking back at them, not say anything. Put them in a position, stand up to them respectfully to be like, okay, here's my purpose. Here's why I'm doing it. Where do you see the fall? So it's not barking back at them. It's not, and if it is, I'm talking like if it is a actionable stance against you, stand up to it. If it's just some wiener on Instagram, nah, fuck it. Who cares? You got people in front of you that do matter.
Well, that reminds me of some sentiments I was reading from this book, Lincoln on Leadership, that I brought up last time Lexi and I talked on here. And it was essentially that, like, if you have someone that's assaulting your character, the Lincoln said, like, if people are talking bad about you in the press or whispers, then ignore all that. But if someone is like blatantly attacking your character, you need to attack that head on by having a face-to-face conversation with that person, essentially, because you need to do it on a sort of like a playing field where you can see each other, read each other's emotions, where people aren't able to hide behind, newspaper or whatever. So that it's good to hear you say that, because you are like Abraham Lincoln. I've always thought that about you.
You're a little short to be like Abe, I think.
I can't grow a mustache.
Yes, you can. I can see that,
I know.
like 6 o'clock shadow. Yes, you can. What else, Tex? I mean, do you think, like, I know we've talked quite a bit about leadership and coaching. Have you thought about any other parallels? Because I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Lexi and I came to visit you, just a few weeks ago, and we talked extensively about, like, just sort of the politics these days and some of the challenges we face. We also talked about, like, the S&C side of, different aspects of police work. But I don't know if there's anything else that you can think of that's been marinating after all of that.
Well, following y'all's stint here, two very monumental leadership moments in which I was able to feel out and make up for a faulty mistake we'll get to in a minute, and the other was learning from said mistake immediately, the next day or two after, and standing in my truth to then not just ignore or leave things in the dark. actually
Mhm.
put light on them to say, all right, we're going to correct this. The first instance was with standing up for one of my teammates on, or not teammates, excuse me, my athletes during a game in which that, I mean, I can't get into it because I had to report this to had to report the other team's coach and the referees and players for targeting one of my players periodically throughout a game. And what would, I mean, you got a sense and a feeling that it was this, and then by the end of it, you realize like, okay, I got to document everything that I have. I have to go to the penalty box and then read in marks against my player and lack thereof against the other team. And while it was going on, unfortunately, it was just this chaos that I couldn't comprehend because I've never witnessed it against an individual, like a discrimination against an individual to the magnitude that was present. I did not know how to react. It was fast, it was going on, and what I should have done was stop the game and forfeited the match to then protect the individual.
Mm.
And there was times on the field where the team, and this is where I'm extremely proud of them, the team was standing up for the individual and getting into fisticuffs that they were penalized for as individuals by the referee. So
Mm.
uh, the chaos, the moment, the fog, I couldn't comprehend because I'd never seen anything like it in my life for 20 years within the sport, and then really sitting down and having to document it to then turn in, much like I imagine an officer reliving the experience and then providing the documentation because I had to speak my truth in the follow up, and I'm prepared to defend my position for the kid and his family. So then I was thinking of y'all two at that moment in time because everything that I write now, my name is on it. I'm turning in, and I must be prepared if this does go to another level.
Mhm.
Uh, so then it was yeah, a long time to write a few paragraphs and then state my position, and then sprinkle in some coaching ethos in there that I've never seen this in 20 years. They're destroying the sanctity of the game, blah blah blah. So uh, that was a monumental experience, and was thinking of y'all too. And then within a day or two, conflict within the office, and this is our position, this is our policy, this is what we do. If we see a car pulled over to the side of the road that needs assistance, or in the middle of the road and we need to push it, we're going to get out. That's who we are. That's what we do. And actions were not in line with that.
Mhm.
So standing by the position of who I am and who I power athlete is, to then provide a learning opportunity, or I could have just ignored action.
Mhm.
So two things that were following many of our conversations over some cocktails, but then it got real quick after y'all left. And now I feel, and I'm glad this call is now versus 2 weeks ago or when we
Yeah.
were in person, because of those two moments. And that's when you just feel confident. And where I say leaders lead, now I'm in a hell of a lot better position to just know and trust myself to act when now further chaos or opportunity presents itself for me to stand for what I believe is good.
What you described is so interesting. Like there's so many moments, I think, especially when you're new as an officer, where you witness something or you go through something and you're like, what in the hell did I just see? And taking like, and then calming down and, actually having to report it. And like you said, I mean, your name's on it. You may have to testify to it later. So you're trying to be as truthful as you can in your memory and your recollection of everything. But when things happen fast, it is just chaotic. And if you've never seen it before, it's chaotic. And I think as you get more used to those things or you see them more often, unfortunately, I say unfortunately because, the fact is that these terrible things do happen very frequently, and you kind of get used to them, but you're kind of able to slow it down a little bit more and react a little bit more in the moment, rather than having to digest it afterwards. So it's almost a very interesting kind of neuroscience thing you just described.
Yeah, incredible. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, it's no surprise to me that our conversations ultimately change your life for the better, um, as they do mine. Maybe to a more like sort of negligible degree, but no, I'm happy. Those are, and that's why I love coming to visit and stuff. Is just and I know Lexi and I have visited numerous times. It's just like there's just so few people I feel like in life where you get to you deep dive into those conversations, and then at the end, like, I don't need to buy a souvenir from Texas, from Austin, because I have all of those great conversations that I take with me and that impact me on how I live my life or how I do my job. And it really does. Like Lexi and I talk about how these podcasts that we do, like she says, like fill our cup. And that's the way I feel like, it's the same, like when you get to have those conversations with people like yourself, who are so adept at communication, and especially in that coaching capacity, and look at life through as many different lenses as possible, and understand the kind of the complexity of what you're doing and the impact of what you're doing. I just love that. So definitely grateful for that. Lex, did you want to talk some strength conditioning? I think we
Yeah.
could transition a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So Tex, I know we talked a little bit about, you've done a lot of work with the NSCA, TSAC, door kickers, as you call them, and sort of the population that we find ourselves in. I don't know that every officer would consider themselves a door kicker, although I think they should consider themselves that. But what would your just basic kind of advice for an officer be, as far as getting into, maybe they're brand new to strength and conditioning? What's something that they can do? What are some elements you would really suggest that they look into?
That's key. Just getting into, and I want you to understand that if you're just getting into it and then doing what your pal or partner's been doing for a long time, yes,
Bench press.
something is better than nothing. However, you're at a different stage in the game than them and need a different stimulus. And there's a hell of a lot more opportunity if you're just getting into fitness and weightlifting and conditioning. So it's boring, it's basic, but squat, step, lunge, push, and pull. Stick with sets of 5. That's going to be your starting point, and then do more than you did yesterday, and you're going to be in a great position. So if you squatted 200 pounds, the next time you squat, do 205 pounds.
Let's use realistic numbers for for starting police officers. I've trained a lot of police officers.
Texas, like,
they're not
should I be going up or down?
They're not doing like 95 kilos for 5 yet, but that's okay.
What are you Canadian?
Cut it in half.
Take that number, cut in half, double it. That's your answer. Tex, I was going to say, one of I mean, I could talk about this a lot with you, but one of the themes carrying over from Power Athlete, from when I coached with you guys, is hard, heavy, fast. That's still a huge component of what I try to instill in people's mind, because they do not, when they look at their training, they can do all the things that you're talking about, the lunging, all the different axis of movement. And then really, they're not doing it with the proper intensity. And so I know that there's a hierarchy to this, because you're going to get on me right now. It's going to go like, learn your movement first, learn how to move well, and then kind of dose in the appropriate intensity, and load and all that stuff. And so that, yeah, absolutely. I would say that your average cop, they dabble, they'll do things, they'll go for runs or whatever. At least they have their own idea of fitness, which is why I say
Bench press.
bench press. Yeah. Bench press, curls, upper body stuff. But that's why I say, I think hard, heavy, fast is a huge reminder, and then rotation. And I touch on those things just because, we're talking about some of the biggest rotation, or kind of like you were talking, the axis of movement, where we see the biggest soft tissue injuries is going to be like back injuries, lower back injuries from rotation, and then any change of direction with the feet, the ankles, the knees, which is not necessarily unique to police work, because in sport, those are the same injurious things, right?
But I will say, in police work, you have people that are highly detrained.
Oh, yeah.
Doing those
Good
change
point.
of directions things or rotation things. Even sitting in a patrol car and typing on your MDT is a rotational activity, right?
It hurts.
and we're getting these officers who are detrained, and they're doing that, and they're developing these back injuries just for the simple task of typing on their freaking computer and then getting out of their car, right? So I mean, it's a serious thing, but it's kind of a trivial thing at the same time, right?
But they got to be in a position to want to move before you're going to get into. And then when I speak to people just getting into fitness for the first time, I break it into 4 different laws to help expand their perspective and get them invested in this. First is how you move is how you live. So if they're all jammed up with it, or if their training is not extensive or anything really, then that's going to turn their life into a very sedentary lifestyle. On their days off, rather than looking for hikes, runs, opportunities, or even freaking rec softball, it's going to turn into a sedentary days off and trips and vacation. And then how you live is how you move. So if you are an active person outside of work, then you're going to look for active opportunities within work. Now, I mean, I would start with those days off. Take that time to get into walks, hikes. Seattle, plenty of hikes around town. Get some. Or freaking rec softball, or find friends, start a little walking group in your neighborhood, and then you'll put yourself in a better position to do more than you did yesterday. As I said, that's one of the laws. Just do more, walk longer, lift heavier, and it'll take you longer. It will take you farther, faster. Final point is, and this is another one-liner, Callie, if you recall, boiling point, not breaking point. If we do stress, if we do add weight, if we do run, if we do bike, we do any of this, push yourself to the point in which it feels like hard work, and you do one more rep, one more step, but don't do 2 more to the point where you can't go into work. You can't do this or that. So it starts to take away from the whole reason that you started to become more active in the first place. So how you move is how you live. How you live is how you move. Boiling point, not breaking point, and then do more than you did yesterday. And
the boiling point, breaking point, we used to say edge and back, but not to the point of no return. That was what we used to say, right? I feel like, yeah.
I feel like this
seminars.
Is the evolving one-liners.
It is. Tex has so many. He is a wealth of knowledge with the one-liners. Those are all really good points.
I've got a question both for Callie and Tex. So we were talking a little bit earlier about how when you're dealing with kids, like attacking that inspiration first, right? So we know that we have a population of officers that listen to us, and maybe they haven't spent a lot of effort in getting fit. So let's attack that inspiration. How do we ooh, this is a good one, Callie. Come on.
Oh God.
So how do we attack the inspiration, the buy-in for these officers to get fit?
Provide free pre-workout would be my suggestion.
nobody knows free.
And no explode for everyone. Man, Tex, how do we provide that inspiration?
There's multiple ways. The fast thinking one would be the fear. So what's a story? What's a situation, whether it's local or somewhere in the country, that there was a negative instance where somebody got injured, blew out an Achilles, or this or that. And then, I mean, mark their stature. What is it freaking, what's their BMI? Are they an obese individual that, so on and so forth? That could inspire or connect it to who they are as a person. Are they an individual that's got an infant? Okay, well, let's think long term. If we start now, by the time this little one is 2, 3, 4, and actually moving around, you're going to be able to keep up. And then if you are an active individual, if fitness, movement is part of your lifestyle, guess what you get to hand down to them? And then your history of high cholesterol and or potential family history of diabetes or heart conditions, so on and so forth, starts to get erased because you took the first steps to becoming an active, fit person to hand it down to your daughter, son, and so on. So we can go all the way there, or the fear to get them started. I mean, and there's a whole range in between. And I mean, this moment in time, if you are even contemplating and thinking about taking the first steps to becoming an active person or improving your health and wellness, that is enough. That is the start, because there's plenty of people that aren't even contemplating it. And if we're talking behavior, it just starts with, I should do that. And I know we poo-pooed on the should, but it is a starting point for
Well,
you ain't doing shit.
so I appreciate those points, those two forms of inspiration that you just used. However, those have been used in our line of work for a long time. The scare tactic has been used as a motivator. Watching videos and training of people getting their ass beat within an inch of their life, like officers and that kind of thing, because the officer is poorly conditioned or didn't have the right techniques or tactics. Additionally, the whole bringing it back to the why, the personal why, I think that's an excellent one. Like, yeah, your kid's grown up, you want to be able to scoop them up off the floor, throw them in the air, all good things. And then you said it brings you to that point of, I should, but that's where I think, unfortunately for a lot of people, it stops. And I trust me, with my current role, I've tried to think of this a lot, of what is that thing that gets people motivated. I don't know if I have necessarily the answer. All I can say is just anecdotally, like, what worked for me when I was on the job. First of all, like, you need people embedded with people that you work with. If I'm trying to change Lexi's mind, or I'm trying to change another officer's mind and get them to train more, you need people embedded in those units who are active, who are actively trying they're subtly pushing those kinds of culture changes. And like, one thing that I used to do, even though we worked third watch, and Lexi, like you did this with me on occasion, is I'd be like, all right, I want to get 50 pull-ups with my duty belt on before the end of shift, right? So I'd have an entire shift to get 50 pull-ups, right? And then people would eventually join in. I would say, hey, so and so, I dragged someone with me, they didn't even know what they were doing, and I'd come in and they'd be like, fuck, all right. They'd take off their vest, we do our pull-ups or whatever, we try to get as many, and we come back and we try to get 50, and then the next day was like 51. So the next week I'd try to get 51. And so I don't know, go ahead, Lex.
No, I'm just having flashbacks of me being like, Callie, grab please help me, grab my feet.
And then what happened? You got to 15 pull-ups, 15 strict pull-ups less than a year later, right?
I think you're being generous, but yes. But then also, yes, Callie is right. We would all get in there in our uniform and we would be doing pull-ups, and, it would be Callie. And I think there was something like, Callie is a badass female that can do 50 fucking pull-ups in her vest. And these guys were like, well, I got to do that now.
Little ego. Yeah, it's a motivator
with that. But just having, and this is going back to leadership, right? Is like, I think if you are someone who is listening to this and you are in a position that you can provide time for your employees to do workouts, provide it. If you are a person listening to this podcast that has that time and enjoys working out, get your fellow officers to work out with you. Like, even if it's just like walking laps, whatever it is, spark that, that love of working out, spark that love of movement. So for those who have the power to do it, provide the time. For those who are sort of just on the level of, officer to officer, provide the influence, right?
Because it is about the movement, it's about what we're doing physically, but it's not about that. Like, to me, it's not about that. It's about yeah, this is going to make us better at our job, live longer, whatever, but it's about the fact that we're in there doing something together that has nothing really to do with our job right then, our police work, whatever. That's where the culture change happens. And I think that people will eventually become, more and more interested in strength training, and they realize, hey, I can hang out with people that I like, that I work with, and not have to talk about cop stuff too.
Yeah. If it's simple, like the pull-ups, one piece. If it appeals, we mentioned different appeals here. Some of them is to not lose to Cali, and then
Impossible.
it's fun. It's part of this. It is a reprieve that I'm still spending time getting to know my team outside of the stress where I have to be on in this moment, and then it is enjoyable. It is an accomplishment. I got 51 pull-ups. Then I'm going to get 52. So it is this a sense of enjoyable accomplishment versus a task that you have to do.
Yeah, and a great mental break too. It takes you completely out of all of the just the normal, the write-up room or the break room or whatever. It takes you in a completely different environment to just be to play. And I know that this is a theme that comes up a lot with stuff that we've talked about. Tex is like just active playing, and what that does for you as well. And I think that's a good mental health break as well. Yeah.
Play is super important, and I think that's Callie. I know you and I, my, well, a lieutenant now, but he's sort of a mentor. He's been in the career for a very long time, and he could have retired years ago. And you always ask him, like, why are you still around? And he says, because I have fun. That I've and he really encourages officers to have a sense of humor, right? And just to have fun. And I think that that's huge. Like, if you can create that culture in the gym of just having fun and, a little bit of self-deprecation. And that kind of brings me back to a little bit of what you guys were talking about of how you coach, because I've witnessed it. I've gone to the Power Athlete symposiums, and you guys have a great way of, prior to the coaching, sort of having this little bit of self-deprecation, a little bit of joking, and everybody's it just breaks everybody down a little bit to the feel ready to be coached, and I think that's the same in police work is you can't take yourself too seriously. You have to be able to have a sense of humor, because we do see a lot of stuff that's just fucked up, and just being able to deal with that in a way that keeps you sane, and then being able to be coached and all that stuff. If you can't have a little bit of levity, I think you can't find that. So
Yeah, I think that's true. That's why all three of us get along so well, because there's that nice balance. Well, Tex, first thing is, I can't believe it's taken us so long to talk with you on here, because there's just so much carryover to our fascination with leadership, and then also just the strength and conditioning part for officers. But second thing is, I hope that, like, we can talk again sometime real soon, and maybe put the conversation in a different direction.
Well, yeah, there's infinite things. I mean, we got decade plus of stories and experiences to share with these people to get to know the real Hinsman. And then at the same time, I mean, we're always learning, and I'd love to share some more adventures, experiences, and growth as I face different leadership challenges.
Tex, where can people find you?
The
Your home
Instagram.
address, please.
Well, I've given it to you umpteen times, and for
I
some reason,
know.
you keep asking me. The Instagram at Power Athlete HQ. You're going to find plenty of podcast clips from the Power Athlete Radio experience, and or just my personal Instagram is at McQuilkin, my last name McQuilkin. There is plenty of adventures or some in-depth coaching or just some lax videos. We're having fun in that respect. And final note that I will say when it comes to coaching, and I feel this will carry over to leadership, it's not what you say as a coach, it's what the athlete hears that's important.
That's a new one for us. What an awesome quote to end it on, because we've tried to pull a great quote from every episode. That's going to be one of them for sure. So thank you so much for that. All right, guys.
Tex, you're awesome. Thank you for everything. And thank you for always hosting us when we come down to Austin.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll be back in 2 weeks.
Welcome anytime. We'll light a fire and drink some brown stuff.
Sounds good. All right. Take care.